Hello, I am going to share something with you very, very fascinating today, and we are going to talk about the brain. Now, this isn't mine, this is a model brain, but it's something that is going to help you really understand your child and what they go through development. And if there's any hindrance or any problems with that development, you'll say, that's my child, or oh my gosh, that's my little girl. That's my boy. So this is going to make sense to you, but I need to geek out a little bit. So put on your geek hacks because this is where I get really kind of nerdy, but it's going to make really good sense to you and make it really easy to understand. So, hey, when we are born, our brain develops in stages. So it doesn't develop equally. And so we need movement to really feed our brain. Our brain really is programmed by movement. Even before we are born, baby's moving around. So a lot of this issue, or a lot of this movement that really feeds the brain first is that upper neck right here. That's why baby, when they're holding their head up and they're turning, they're really lighting up this brain. More particularly, this part of the brain. I'm not going to give words, just understand it's the back part of the brain. Okay, it's the cerebellum. It's the cerebellum. It really lights this up. And the purpose of the cerebellum is to relay messages to different parts of the brain, but very distinct parts of the brain called right up here, your frontal lobe. And that's where we do all the thinking. That's what really separates us from all the other animals is this big noggin up here. And it really allows logic, emotional connection, big picture thinking, find the details, the trees, all those kind of things. It really sets us up for being able to read and language and demeanor and mood and all those types of things. So we need movement to stimulate this part of the brain, to feed this part of the brain. But here it goes. You're only developing the right side of the brain. This child's developing mostly a great majority of the right side of the brain from the age of 0 to 2, 2.5, maybe 3. And so we need movement like crawling up the stairs, weight-bearing exercise, movement, all those things that are going to fire the cerebellum, defeating the cerebellum. Now, guess where most of this stimulation comes from? Like I said before, the upper neck and the rest of the spine is where most of this input into the brain is coming from. So you see, like if the neck wasn't moving correctly, say at birth, because it's more susceptible, well, we know that the right side of the brain is not going to develop correctly because it only has a 2.5 year window to develop. So that's important because the right side of the brain controls bonding, emotion, big picture thinking, like the context for reading. It tells the story. It sees the forest, the big picture kind of things. But especially the bonding, the emotional, the connection as well. Now, what's significant about the right side of the brain? Because the right side of the brain is going to develop 67% of brain development happens within the first 2 years. Get that. 67% of brain development in the first 2 years. So if this is not developing correctly, we know that the child's going to have a problem with bonding, emotional expression, those types of things. All right, so we know that this side of the brain also regulates the left side of the brain. So this has to say this is when this gets turned on. So let me make, for instance, because the left side of the brain starts to develop between 2.5 to 6 years of age. Right when kids start kindergarten. Yes. So they understand kindergarten, so their brain is starting to turn on through those types of stage. And you'll know when this happens because the child will start asking the question, but why? But why? But why? Because they're trying to figure out things and trying to understand their surroundings in a lot more detail than what they have. So, and usually they talk about, the brain shifting. Yeah, it's a little bit of a transition for the right brain to the left brain because they're going back and forth, and this right brain has to regulate the development of this. Now, up until the age of 6, it's going to be 95% of development happens up to the age of 6. And 6 on is the rest of the 5%. So you see how crucial this 0 to 6 years of age is to make sure that that spine is really putting stimulation into this part of the brain, feeds the right side of the brain, regulates this side of the brain, because if this doesn't, it turns this part of the brain on. And that's where the fight or flight happens on the left lobe right here. So if this doesn't get stimulated, this doesn't get turned on, the bonding brain, the emotional brain, the regulating brain, the left brain can't stimulate or regulate this part, we start to see meltdowns, right? ADHD, autism all over the brain. Those types of things start to happen. because the brain only has a short window to develop in that period of time. So we see that movement is so crucial to a baby, so crucial that they walk, they go through the developmental milestones and they meet them accordingly, because that's the window for development of the brain. And different parts of the brain control different parts of the thought process, or what makes us human. So the left brain, the fine motor details, the words, the definitions when it comes to reading, okay? The pattern analysis and all kinds of things like, hey, if I can read the different letters of the alphabet, right? But the right side of the brain is putting the word together. I understand what that means, big picture. And then down here is the audio and visual parts of the brain too. So like when a person speaks or language or reading, it engages everything, all parts of the brain, because it needs the bonding, right? It needs the words. And then it needs the vocabulary, the expression, the audio visual cortex is like right in this part of the brain. So it shuts it off. So this is kind of like the fight or flight brain, like where is everything, what's happening? And if that's not regulated by movement in the spine, which we see so many times, so when that baby's born with like torticollis or damage to that spine, that's not going to allow that brain to work properly in those certain milestones. I hope this was fascinating to you, because it is a huge part of me. And I'm going to actually make a picture of this reference to this poster back here, and it's going to make it very simple to you to summarize what we talked about. So we see that this part of the brain goes from the back forward and the bottom up. And if it's not getting stimulation, well, if this gear is not developing correctly, we know that this gear is not going to develop correctly. So movement feeds the gears. We have to have movement to feed this gear, And if a certain part of this gear is in development, then it's the development stage, not working correctly, you see how it affects the development of the rest of the brain. So, hey, I am Dr. Randy Wirtz, inThrive Chiropractic. I hope you enjoyed geeking out with me today on this. Know a little bit long, but I hope it's beneficial, and I hope it gets you curious. Curious to say, oh my gosh, a chiropractor is talking about this. This is something that's fascinating to me. It explains so much to what's happening with my child. Then I suggest, if you want more answers and it starts to ask more questions, give us a call, please. I'd be happy to walk through this with you. I'd be even happy to do a workshop about this and present to you for you, friends, family, and talk about this and how important it is for this to occur. Hey, God bless. Have a great day. Geek out all. Bye-bye.